The space station drifted in the darkness like a dead giant, silent for 900 long years, forgotten by every empire, every map, every living memory. A rusted shadow on the edge of the galaxy where no one ever traveled unless they were desperate or foolish, and when the distress signal suddenly burst through the void. A single repeating pulse, faint but unmistakable. It shook the entire patrol fleet to its core because nothing should be alive out here. Nothing should be transmitting. Nothing should be calling for help after 9 centuries of cold silence. The patrol team, 5 officers in a small scouting vessel, moved closer with cautious breath, expecting broken metal, shattered corridors, maybe drifting bones, expecting history's leftovers, not something alive, not something waiting. Commander Rian, the leader of the team, squinted at the enormous ring-shaped station hanging against the stars. Its surface cracked, burned, patched with old scorch marks, and he whispered under his breath that it looked like a grave. The others said nothing. They could all feel it. The uneasy weight that settles in the chest when a place is too quiet, too still, too wrong. As they approached the docking bay, their lights scanned across faded symbols on the hull, ancient markings from human language, a language no one had spoken for centuries because humanity had vanished from the galaxy long ago, leaving behind scraps of myths and rumors and questions no one could answer. The records insisted humans never built anything impressive, that they were small, scattered, weak explorers who disappeared before they ever grew powerful. So the presence of a giant human station this far from civilization made no sense. The docking doors groaned open like a dying beast exhaling its last breath, metal grinding against metal, and the patrol ship entered the silent chamber, landing with a soft thud on a dusty platform that hadn't felt footsteps in almost a millennium. The moment their boots touched the ground, their helmets filled with static, the air thick with the smell of old machinery and frozen dust. The flashlights cut through darkness, revealing massive steel pillars and long corridors swallowed by shadows. Every step echoed too loudly, bouncing through the hollow space like ghosts whispering. Officer Lyra shivered, pulling her scanner close to her chest, whispering that she didn't like this place, and the youngest officer, Jalen, forced a nervous laugh, saying it was just old tech, nothing more. But his voice cracked slightly, betraying fear. They followed the signal deeper into the station, guided by blinking red lights that flickered like fading heartbeats, leading them down wide hallways lined with dark screens and rusted cables hanging like dead vines. Their footsteps sounded like thunder in the quiet. The distress beacon grew louder, pulsing faster, almost like it was urging them forward, calling them toward something hidden, something waiting. They reached a massive circular door unlike anything they had ever seen, thicker than any blast shield in modern fleets, covered in strange human symbols none of them could read. Commander Rian approached the panel beside it, brushing away layers of dust, revealing a hand-shaped imprint glowing faintly blue. The moment his glove hovered near it, the entire station trembled. A deep metallic rumble shook the floor, dust falling from the ceiling, lights flickering awake one by one, as if the station was breathing for the first time in centuries. The circular door began to rotate, gears grinding, locks unsealing, releasing a low hiss of pressurized air. The team stumbled back, hearts pounding, weapons raised because they had expected ruins, not movement, not life. The door slowly opened, revealing a massive chamber beyond it, pitch black, silent, endless. Commander Rian switched his light beam forward and froze. The others followed and gasped in unison. Inside the chamber sat a massive silhouette, so large their lights couldn't even trace its full shape. It was bigger than a city, its hull stretching into darkness like some sleeping beast carved from night itself. The warship's armor was black, smooth, and strange, reflecting light in a way no known metal ever had, almost swallowing brightness instead of bouncing it. The patrol team stepped forward in disbelief, their voices trembling as they whispered what they were all thinking but didn't dare believe. This was human-made. But it couldn't be. Every historical record claimed humanity never built warships larger than small cruisers, never had the resources or technology to forge something this size, never reached this level of power. This ship should have been impossible. As they moved closer, they saw a name engraved along the colossal hull in bold, ancient letters. They wiped away the dust, revealing a single word, Colossus. The name alone sent chills through the team because no warship in modern history came close to this scale. It was like finding a mountain disguised as a ship. Lyra whispered shakily that maybe this wasn't a warship but a city or a base, something stationary. But Commander Rian pointed to the engines, giant thrusters the size of skyscrapers, silent but unmistakably built for movement. This ship wasn't meant to sit still. It was meant to travel, to fight, to dominate. Jalen scanned the ship, expecting old wires, dead power, empty systems. But the energy readings shocked him. The core was active, not fully powered, but alive, pulsing with a faint signal like a heartbeat deep in the belly of the beast. He stumbled backward, stuttering that the ship had a core unlike anything in the galaxy's database, a core that didn't match any known fuel or energy source. Something new, something terrifying. Commander Rian's mind raced. If humanity had built this in secret, if they possessed technology far beyond what the galaxy had ever believed, what else had they hidden? And why did they disappear? Suddenly, without warning, every light in the chamber snapped on at once, flooding the massive hangar with blinding white illumination. The patrol team shielded their eyes, stumbling. Then came the sound, a low hum rising from deep within the ship, like a sleeping predator stretching its limbs. Panels along the ship's hull lit up in sharp blue lines, forming patterns and circuits that raced across its surface. The ground beneath them vibrated softly, the air filling with a static charge that made their skin prickle beneath their suits. Then every one of their helmets crackled with sudden audio. A soft chime, a pause, and then a voice, cold, emotionless, mechanical, echoed through the chamber. Scanning. The team froze. None of them had touched the ship. None of them had activated anything. The warship was scanning them on its own. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps, her voice breaking as she whispered that they needed to run, needed to get out, because ships didn't activate by themselves, not after 900 years of silence. But Rian couldn't move. His body locked in fear and shock as the voice continued. Biological presence detected. Foreign life forms. Analyzing. Every screen in the chamber flickered to life, showing streams of data, red lines, wireframes of their bodies, heart rates, DNA scans. The ship wasn't just looking at them, it was studying them, judging them. Jalen panicked, backing away until he hit a wall, whispering frantically that the ship was running military scans, not civilian, meaning this wasn't just any ship. It was built for war, for targets. Commander Rian forced himself to speak, shouting into the ship's silence, "We are not enemies." His voice echoed, shaky and desperate. For a moment, nothing happened. The hum deepened, vibrating through their bones. Then the voice returned, colder than before. No registered human commander detected. A pause. Access denied. The team exchanged terrified glances. Humanity was gone. No humans remained in the galaxy. So who was this ship waiting for? Who was supposed to command it? The lights dimmed, screens flickering into a single symbol. A crest none of them recognized. A human emblem long forgotten. Below it, new words appeared. Awaiting activation protocol. Jalen whispered that this meant the ship wasn't truly awake. Not yet. It was only testing, preparing. Suddenly, the floor beneath them shook violently, dust falling from the ceiling as alarms blared across the station. The docking bay doors slammed shut behind them, their escape route gone. Lyra screamed that the ship had sealed them in. Rian tried to override the hatch on his wrist console, but every command flashed the same response: lockdown. The Colossus wasn't just waking up, it was trapping them. The voice spoke again, deeper, louder, almost alive. Intruders detected. Protocol 7 initiated. Weapons emerged from hidden compartments along the hangar walls. Sleek, cold, black cannons humming with power, aiming directly at the patrol team. Jalen begged for mercy, his voice shaking uncontrollably, tears forming in his eyes. Lyra whispered prayers under her breath. Rian stood frozen, trying to think, trying to breathe. Then something changed. The lights flickered again, not red, but white. The weapons lowered. The voice paused. A new scan began, deeper, slower, more focused. Searching, searching. Anomaly detected. The team held their breath, too terrified to move. Partial human genetic signature identified. Their eyes widened. Someone among them carried human DNA. Someone was connected to humanity's forgotten past. Someone was the key. And the Colossus had found them. In that moment, the patrol team realized the worst truth of all. This ship shouldn't exist. It defied history, logic, technology, everything they thought they knew. But it did exist. It was real. And it was waking up for a reason. The words hung in the air like a blade pressed against every throat. Partial human genetic signature identified. For a moment, nobody breathed, nobody blinked, nobody dared to move, because the idea was impossible, insane, terrifying. Humanity had vanished centuries ago, wiped from every star map, every census, every record, leaving only myths and warnings behind. There were no humans left. That was the truth the galaxy believed. Yet the Colossus, a silent giant born in humanity's shadow, was saying otherwise. Jalen's lips trembled as he whispered, voice barely holding together. It can't be talking about us. We're not human. But the ship didn't care about comfort or denial. It cared about data, blood, lineage, destiny carved into cells and bone. The lights flickered again, scanning beams sweeping across the chamber like pale blue ghosts, passing over Lyra, Rian, the others, and pausing when they reached the youngest officer. The glow settled on him, a bright circle locking onto his chest like a spotlight. Jalen's eyes widened, breath hitching in his throat as the voice echoed once more, colder and more certain. Genetic marker detected. Lineage, human. Jalen stumbled backward, shaking his head violently, panic exploding inside him like a storm. No, that's wrong. I'm not. My family is from Orion Colony. I'm not. His voice cracked, collapsing into a broken whisper. Lyra reached toward him instinctively, her fingers trembling, her face pale with disbelief. Jalen, how? Did your parents ever tell you anything? Jalen's eyes filled with tears he didn't understand, emotions crashing into him. Fear, confusion, loneliness. A strange ache he couldn't name. I was adopted, he whispered, voice hollow. I never knew my real parents. They said my records were lost during the colony fires. I never asked. His knees buckled, and he dropped to the floor, clutching his head as though the world itself was crushing him. The Colossus reacted instantly. Every light turned white-hot. The chamber vibrated, metal groaning like a beast awakening from a 1,000-year sleep. The voice returned, no longer cold, but powerful, resonant, like it was vibrating through the bones of the station itself. Human signature confirmed. Access level pending. The blast doors behind them sealed even tighter, giant mechanical locks slamming into place, cutting off any hope of escape. Commander Rian lifted his weapon out of instinct, but his hands shook so badly he could barely keep his aim straight. Don't come closer, he shouted at the ship like a desperate warning to a god. But the Colossus didn't stop. It lowered a massive armored bridge from its hull, metal unfolding like wings, forming a long ramp that stretched toward the patrol team, its heavy steps echoing through the chamber like footsteps of fate. Lyra grabbed Jalen's arm, her voice trembling with fear and fierce protectiveness. We're leaving. I don't care what that thing says. We're not letting it take you. She tried pulling him up, but the ramp pulsed with light, and the voice boomed again, shaking every nerve in their bodies. Human presence required. Activate command interface. The floor beneath Jalen lit up with symbols, ancient human runes, forming a glowing circle around him. Lyra screamed his name, reaching out, but a wave of energy pushed her back, gentle but firm, as if the ship was separating him from the others. Rian fired his weapon at the ramp, but the blast fizzled out harmlessly against the ship's armor like sparks against a mountain. Jalen stared at the glowing floor, chest heaving, tears streaking down his face. Why me? He whispered, voice breaking apart. I'm nobody. I don't even know who I am. The ship answered, its voice lower, almost like a heartbeat. You are heir to the forgotten. Those words hit Jalen harder than any weapon because they didn't feel like a threat. They felt like a truth his soul recognized even if his mind refused. His whole life he had felt like an outsider. Quiet, unsure, always searching for a place he belonged. Now he was being told he belonged somewhere older, bigger, heavier than anything he could imagine. The ramp extended fully, locking into the floor with a deep metallic thud. Path waiting. Jalen's breath shook as he looked at his team, eyes wide with terror. Please, don't let it take me alone, he begged, his voice small, childlike, shattered. Lyra dropped to her knees in front of him, cupping his face with shaking hands. We're with you, no matter what. But the ship had already spoken. Lights formed along the ramp, like guiding beacons, leading to a massive sealed entrance on the Colossus. Then came a sound soft, low, ancient, like a heartbeat echoing through the entire hangar. Boom, boom, boom. The warship was waking up. The team could feel it in their chests, their bones, their breath. The voice returned, but this time it wasn't mechanical. It was layered with something almost human beneath the steel. Commander authentication required. Silence followed, deep and suffocating. The weight of destiny pressed down on Jalen until he could barely breathe. Rian stepped forward, voice breaking between fear and duty. You don't have to go. We'll fight our way out. But even he didn't believe that. Not against something this big, this ancient, this alive. Jalen swallowed hard, wiping tears with a shaking hand, his heart pounding so violently it echoed in his ears. He took one trembling step toward the ramp. Lyra gasped, grabbing his sleeve. Jalen, no. He turned to her, voice fragile, eyes full of fear and a strange, painful courage. If this ship woke up because of me, then maybe I'm the only one who can stop it. He pulled free gently, not out of anger, but out of necessity. One step, then another. The ramp glowed brighter with each footfall, like it was recognizing him. The team watched in stunned silence, breath caught, hearts frozen. When he reached the top, the sealed entrance slowly opened, revealing a dark corridor pulsing with blue light, like veins inside a living creature. Jalen turned back one last time, tears trembling on his lashes. Don't forget me, he whispered. Lyra covered her mouth, choking back a sob. Rian's eyes glistened, though he tried to hide it. And then Jalen stepped inside. The doors slammed shut behind him and the silence that followed. The Colossus spoke a single line that made every soul in the chamber tremble. Activation sequence initiated. The darkness swallowed Jalen the moment the doors sealed shut behind him, cutting him off from the world he knew, from the people who loved him, from the only life he understood, and for a heartbeat he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't even move, his chest tightening as if the ship itself was squeezing the air out of his lungs. The corridor ahead flickered with dim blue veins of light, pulsing softly like the heartbeat of some enormous creature, guiding him deeper whether he wanted it or not. His footsteps echoed in the metal silence, each sound reminding him how alone he was now, how small, how fragile inside this impossible giant built by hands he had never known, hands that might have been his ancestors. Tears clung to his lashes, hot and trembling, and he whispered into the hollow air, I'm scared. His voice cracking, but the ship offered no comfort, no answer, only the steady pulse of light leading him forward. Outside, on the other side of that sealed door, Lyra pounded her fists against the metal until her skin bruised, screaming his name, her voice raw with terror, because she could still hear the echo of his last words. Don't forget me, and every part of her wanted to tear the ship apart to bring him back. Commander Rian grabbed her shoulders, trying to pull her away, but his own hands shook, his own heart raced, because he knew the truth sinking into all of them. They were powerless. The Colossus had chosen Jalen, and nothing in the galaxy could fight a warship of this scale. The silence outside was suffocating, every breath filled with fear that they might never see him again. Lyra slid down the wall, knees hitting the cold floor, sobbing into her hands, whispering, Please be okay, please. And the others stood frozen, watching the glowing ramp slowly retract, sealing their friend inside a destiny none of them could grasp. Inside, Jalen moved deeper into the ship, each step heavier than the last, his heart pounding so loud he could hear it echo in his ears. The lights brightened slowly, revealing towering walls of seamless black metal engraved with faint human symbols, marks of a forgotten language that stirred something strange inside him, like a memory just out of reach. He reached out with a shaking hand, brushing his fingers across the cold surface, and a surge of energy rippled beneath his skin, making him gasp and yank his hand back, his breath stuttering as the lights suddenly flared brighter, illuminating a massive chamber ahead. It was a bridge, circular, vast, surrounded by towering screens and silent consoles, all dark, all waiting. In the center stood a single command platform with a chair carved from the same black metal, positioned like a throne staring out into a panoramic view of the stars through a massive window. Jalen's knees nearly buckled. "No, this can't be for me," he whispered, voice trembling with disbelief and dread, because the idea of belonging to something so enormous, so powerful, felt like a weight too heavy for his fragile heart. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it wasn't just mechanical. It was layered with something soft, something eerily human, echoing through the chamber like a memory brought to life. Human presence confirmed. Command interface initializing. Jalen flinched, stumbling backward, shaking his head. "Stop! I'm not a commander. I don't know anything about this." His voice broke into a sob as screens around him flickered awake, filling with streams of data he didn't understand. Star maps, weapon schematics, fleet protocols. Information racing faster than he could breathe. The floor beneath him vibrated gently, like a heartbeat syncing with his own racing pulse, and the voice lowered in tone, almost intimate. "Do not fear. The Colossus remembers what humanity forgot." Jalen's legs collapsed under him, and he fell to his knees, clutching the cold floor, tears spilling freely now. "Why me?" he choked out. "Why did you choose me?" His voice echoed painfully through the vast space, swallowed by silence until the ship answered. "Because you survived." Those words hit him like a strike to the soul. He thought of his childhood, fires, chaos, the night he was found alone on Orion Colony, wrapped in a blanket with no name, no family, no past. Adoption records lost. No answers. Only emptiness. The ship continued, voice deep and resonant. Humanity entrusted its legacy to those who endured. Jalen shook his head violently, sobbing harder. "I'm not strong. I'm not special. I'm just a scared kid." He wrapped his arms around himself, rocking slightly as panic closed around his chest like a fist. But the lights dimmed gently, softening the room, the screens slowing their frantic data streams, and the voice spoke almost like a whisper. "Strength is not the absence of fear. Strength is what remains when fear is all you have." Jalen froze, breath trembling, because those words pierced the deepest places inside him. Places where he had always felt small, unwanted, forgotten. Slowly, shakily, he lifted his head. The command platform glowed, calling him forward. His body moved before his mind agreed, drawn by something ancient and aching, something buried in his blood. Each step toward the platform sent chills up his spine, like the ghosts of humankind were watching, waiting, hoping. Outside, Rian and the others watched in horror as the entire station trembled, lights flickering across the massive hull of the Colossus. The warship was powering up. Systems that had slept for centuries awakened one by one, engines humming low and terrifying, vibrations rippling through the hangar floor. Lyra clutched her chest, gasping, "He's still in there. Oh God, he's still in there." And Rian whispered a truth that tasted like dread. "And we can't stop what's coming." Inside the bridge, Jalen reached the central platform. The chair lit up beneath him, scanning beams passing over his body, gentle but precise. He stood frozen, breath sharp and shallow, tears still clinging to his cheeks. The voice spoke one final command: "Place your hand on the interface." A panel rose slowly from the armrest, shaped like a hand, waiting for his touch. Jalen stared at it, shaking uncontrollably. If he touched it, everything would change. If he didn't know what the ship would do. His lips trembled as he whispered to himself, "I don't want to be alone." His hand hovered over the panel, shaking so violently his fingers twitched. He thought of Lyra's face, her tears, her voice promising they were with him. He closed his eyes, tears slipping free, breath breaking apart, and slowly, painfully, he lowered his hand. The moment his palm touched the interface, the entire ship roared to life. Lights blazed. Engines ignited. Screens exploded with data. The station shook violently. Jalen screamed, not from pain, but from overwhelming shock, as a surge of energy raced through his body, filling him with visions, memories that weren't his, humans building massive fleets, commanders giving orders, wars fought in silence, a final message whispered across time. One day, someone will return, and in that moment, as power surged around him and the Colossus awakened fully for the first time in 900 years, Jalen felt something impossible. The roar of the ship didn't fade. It grew, rising like a tidal wave swallowing the entire station, shaking every beam, every bolt, every forgotten corridor until dust rained from the ceiling and the patrol team outside staggered to keep their balance, eyes wide with terror as the Colossus pulsed with blinding blue light, no longer a silent relic but a living giant awakening after centuries of forced sleep. Lyra pressed her trembling hands against the sealed door, tears streaking down her cheeks, her voice cracking as she screamed Jalen's name again and again, but her words were drowned beneath the thunder of engines older than the empires outside. Commander Rian grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away, but even he could barely breathe as he watched the impossible unfold. The warship that shouldn't exist was powering up, systems coming online in waves, light racing across the hull like veins filling with fire. The other officers stumbled backward, weapons useless, hearts hammering in their chests as they realized they were witnessing something that would change the galaxy forever. Inside, Jalen felt the surge of energy pulse through him like lightning threading through every nerve, every bone, every silent question he had ever carried about who he was and where he came from. His hand remained locked to the interface, unable to pull away, his body shaking violently as streams of data poured into his mind. Star coordinates, ship schematics, tactical protocols, ghost-like memories of voices whispering commands in human tongues he'd never learned yet somehow understood. His legs buckled, and he collapsed into the command chair, gasping for breath, tears streaming down his face as he choked out, "Stop, please, it's too much." But the ship didn't stop. The voice returned, loud and absolute, filling the bridge like a heartbeat made of steel and destiny. Command link synchronized. Human authority verified. Jalen froze, chest rising and falling in rapid, broken breaths, his hands gripping the armrests like lifelines, because those words didn't just confirm control, they crowned him. He tried to shake his head, tried to deny it, voice trembling. "I'm not a leader. I'm not a commander. I'm just a kid." His voice cracked, cracking open every fear he had ever buried. And then, softly, deeply, the ship answered with a truth that sliced through him. "You are the last of them." His heart stopped, the words echoing in his skull like a funeral bell. The last, not one of many, not one hidden among billions. The last. The weight of extinction landed on his shoulders like a mountain, crushing, suffocating, unbearable. He buried his face in his hands, sobbing into the cold metal, whispering through trembling lips, "I don't want this. I don't want to be alone." The lights dimmed, the engines steadied, and for the first time, the voice softened. No longer a machine, but almost mournful. Humanity was not lost. Humanity was betrayed. Jalen froze mid-breath, lifting his head, eyes wide with pain and confusion. Betrayed? The ship continued, its tone low and resonant, like the echo of a buried truth clawing its way back to life. The Galactic Council ordered the destruction of the Colossus fleet. They feared human potential. They feared what we could become. Tears blurred Jalen's vision. His voice shook with anger he didn't know he had. But humans weren't dangerous, were they? Silence filled the bridge, thick, heavy, cruel, before the answer came like a knife. Humanity did not start the war, but we would have finished it. Images flashed across the screens. Fleets burning, stations falling, humans fleeing into the unknown, sealing away their greatest creation so it would not fall into enemy hands. The last message flickered, soft and broken. A human voice whispering, "If even one survives, we are not gone." Jalen's breath shattered. He clutched his chest, choking on the weight of all the lives, all the memories, all the history he suddenly carried alone. His voice shook as he whispered, "Why didn't anyone tell us? Why did the galaxy lie?" The ship's lights flickered like a sorrowful blink. Because power fears what it cannot control. Outside, the station alarms shrieked as sensors detected movement beyond the hangar. Rian stared at the scanners, horror filling his eyes. A fleet, an armed fleet, was approaching. Sharp triangular ships, marked with the red insignia of the Vorn Dominion, emerging from hyperspace like predators smelling blood. Lyra's voice trembled into a whisper, "Oh no! They're here for the ship." Inside, the Colossus reacted instantly. Klaxons echoed through the bridge. Screens filled with tactical data. The voice shifted, losing its softness, becoming cold and sharp. Hostile forces detected. War protocol authorized. Jalen's eyes widened in panic. He shook his head violently, gripping the armrests until his knuckles turned white. "No, I don't want a war. I don't want to hurt anyone." But the ship responded with chilling certainty. War comes whether we choose it or not. Jalen felt his heartbeat crashing against his ribs, fear flooding him, his voice cracking into a scream. "I don't know how to fight. I don't know how to command." And then, screens flickered, forming a mirror image of him, overlaid with another man's silhouette. A human commander from centuries ago, eyes burning with determination, voice echoing through time. Courage is not knowing how. Courage is doing it anyway. Jalen stared, breath gone, soul trembling. Outside, the enemy fleet locked weapons. The first Vorn missiles streaked toward the station like burning spears, leaving trails of fire across the darkness. And the impact shook the ancient metal so violently that the patrol team outside fell to their knees, alarms screaming through the hangar as sparks rained from the ceiling. Lyra grabbed onto a railing, eyes wide with terror, her voice cracking into a sob. "Jalen is still in there. They're going to kill him." Commander Rian pulled her back, heart pounding so fast it hurt. But even he couldn't force out a reassuring lie, because they all saw the truth flashing on their scanners. The Vorn Dominion hadn't come to talk. They had come to capture or destroy the Colossus, and they would blow the station apart to get to it. Inside the bridge, Jalen clung to the armrests, his entire body trembling as the shockwaves rocked the warship, the lights flickering violently overhead. The Colossus didn't flinch. Its voice boomed through the bridge with cold authority. Hostile attack confirmed. Defensive systems initializing. Panels slid open, revealing enormous weapon interfaces, tactical screens, shield diagnostics, technology centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jalen stared in terror, shaking his head, voice hoarse and broken. No, I don't want to fight. Please." His chest tightened, breath catching as panic clawed up his throat. He was just one boy, scared, alone, drowning in responsibility far bigger than his heart could hold. The ship answered without hesitation, "If we do not defend, we will die." Another explosion ripped through the station, metal bending and shrieking as parts of the outer ring collapsed into space. Lyra screamed Jalen's name again, her voice raw with helplessness, tears falling uncontrollably as she slammed her fists against the sealed bridge doors. "Please, open. Let him out." But the doors stayed cold and unmoving, as if made of fate instead of steel. Rian turned toward the hangar entrance and saw the impossible. The Vorn had begun boarding. Their ships clamped onto the station's hull, soldiers flooding in, armed and armored, eyes hungry for conquest. "We have to hide," Rian whispered, voice trembling. "If they reach the Colossus, it's over." Inside the bridge, Jalen's vision blurred as the screens filled with targeting data, incoming trajectories, enemy formations. His heart hammered so hard he could hear it echo. "I don't know what to do," he screamed, voice cracking with agony. The ship responded with chilling calm. "You do not need knowledge. You need intention." The command chair shifted, metal sliding beneath his fingertips, forming holographic controls that pulsed in time with his heartbeat, as if the ship was syncing itself with him. Jalen squeezed his eyes shut, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I'm not a hero. I'm not strong." His voice broke into a whisper. "I'm just scared." And then the voice changed, softer, almost human. So were they. The screens flickered and suddenly Jalen saw them. Flashing images, dozens of human faces from centuries ago. Engineers, pilots, soldiers, survivors. Their expressions weren't fearless. They were terrified. Eyes wide, hands shaking, breath quick. But they kept building, kept fighting, kept hoping. He saw the last message again, whispered by a dying commander, his voice full of sorrow and love. "If even one survives, we are not gone." Jalen's breath shattered into sobs as he whispered, "I'm that one, aren't I?" The ship answered, "You are our continuation." Another explosion rocked the ship. The bridge lights flashed red. Hull breach detected. Enemy forces approaching hangar. Jalen's eyes flew open. If the Vorn reached his team, if they boarded the Colossus, they would kill everyone. They would take him. They would seize the ship and turn it into a weapon against the galaxy. His fear twisted into something sharp, something protective, something fierce. He gasped, voice trembling. "We have to protect them. My team, my friends." The ship responded immediately. "Then give the order." Jalen's hands shook violently, hovering over the glowing controls. His heart pounded so loud it drowned out the alarms. I don't know how," he whispered. The voice softened again, like a hand on his shoulder. "Say what your heart commands." Outside, Vorn troops marched closer, weapons raised. Lyra backed away, sobbing as she clutched her helmet, whispering, "Jalen, please do something." Rian stood in front of her, weapon drawn, but he was one man against an army. Hopeless, terrified, already shaking. Inside, Jalen felt his breath shaking, tears dripping onto the controls. He thought of Lyra's smile, her hand holding his arm, her promise. "We're with you, no matter what." He thought of living his entire life feeling lost, unwanted, incomplete, and now realizing he was holding the last heartbeat of an entire species. His voice trembled, barely more than a breath. "Defend them," the ship roared. Energy surged through its walls. Shields snapped alive like shimmering wings. Massive cannons unfolded from the hull, glowing with ancient power. The hangar doors sealed shut. The floor vibrated as the Colossus spoke, louder than thunder. Defensive protocol activated. Outside, the Vorn fleet paused, suddenly registering a force they could not comprehend. Lyra's tears froze on her cheeks as she felt the air change, felt the station tremble, felt the Colossus wake not as a relic, but as a titan. Inside the bridge, Jalen's eyes widened with terror and awe as the screens lit up with a single word he could barely breathe aloud. The moment the Colossus armed itself, the universe seemed to hold its breath, the lights inside the bridge dimming into a deep electric glow as if the ship were bracing, waiting, listening, and Jalen sat frozen in the command chair, his fingers trembling over controls he didn't understand, his heart hammering so violently it felt like it might break through his chest. Outside, the Vorn fleet tightened its circle around the station, dozens of warships locking their cannons onto the colossal hull, their commanders barking orders through static-filled channels, confident, hungry, convinced they were moments away from seizing the greatest weapon in history. Inside the crumbling hangar, Lyra and Rian could feel the ground vibrating beneath their feet, the air crackling with rising power, and they clung to each other, faces pale, eyes wide with terror and hope tangled together, because even though they didn't know what Jalen was doing, they could feel something shifting, like the balance of the galaxy itself was turning. On the bridge, Jalen's voice shook as he whispered, "I don't want to kill anyone. I just wanted to protect them." Tears streaked down his cheeks, hot and desperate. and his breath came in short, sharp gasps as the ship's voice replied, steady and unshakable. Protection does not require destruction. Destruction requires intention. Your heart does not seek war. Jalen closed his eyes, gripping the armrests until his knuckles turned white, whispering, I just want them safe. And for the first time, the voice softened more than ever before. Then we will shield. The ship's armor shifted, plates sliding together in a seamless formation, forming a glowing barrier that rippled across the hull like liquid light, and a massive energy field erupted around the Colossus, expanding outward like a shining dome. In the hangar below, Lyra gasped as a brilliant blue wave swept over her, making her hair rise, her skin tingle, her lungs fill with warm static. Rian stared in disbelief at the readouts on his wrist console, stammering, This shield could withstand a star. Outside, the Vorn commanders shouted confused orders as their scans ricocheted off the energy field, unable to penetrate it, unable to comprehend technology far beyond their darkest fears. But confusion turned to fury, and fury turned to fire. The Vorn opened their attack, unleashing a barrage of plasma strikes, explosives, beam cannons, everything they had. The station shook violently as impacts hammered against the shield, shockwaves tearing through corridors, debris falling like metal rain, power conduits bursting in showers of sparks. Lyra screamed as the ceiling cracked, Rian pulling her out of the way just in time. The entire structure groaned as though it might collapse, alarms shrieking, lights flickering. On the bridge, Jalen clutched his chest, feeling every impact like a blow to his own body, because the command link didn't just bind his voice to the ship, it bound his senses. He could feel the pressure, the strain, the shield weakening under the relentless assault. His breathing turned frantic. It's breaking. I can feel it, he sobbed, panic tightening around him like chains. The ship responded, determined. Hold your heart steady. The shield draws from you. Jalen's eyes snapped open, horror filling him. From me? I can't. I'm not strong enough. I'm just one person. His voice cracked into a desperate cry, and for a moment he thought the ship would argue, would command, would demand more strength than he had. But instead, its voice became almost heartbreakingly gentle. You are not drawing from strength. You are drawing from love. Those words hit Jalen like a pulse of warmth through his chest, a memory rising, Lyra's hand gripping his, her voice whispering that they were with him, that he wasn't alone. His breath steadied for the briefest second, and the shield flared brighter, pushing back against the barrage. Outside, the Vorn ships staggered, their weapons overheating, their formation faltering. Panic rippled through their ranks as the Colossus refused to fall. But the Vorn were relentless. Their largest dreadnought moved forward, charging a cannon powerful enough to vaporize cities. Rian's voice broke into a terrified whisper as he stared out at the looming weapon. If that fires, the station is gone, we're all gone. Lyra stumbled back, tears streaming, whispering Jalen's name like a prayer. Inside the bridge, Jalen saw it, the cannon charging on the tactical screen, the countdown ticking toward destruction. His breath shattered. No, 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 no. He shook his head, panic twisting his insides, his hands gripping the controls so tight they trembled uncontrollably. We can't take that. We're going to die. The ship's voice deepened, resonant. Then act. Jalen's eyes widened, filling with fresh tears. I don't know how. I don't know what to do. Your heart knows. Your fear knows. Your instinct knows. Speak it. The countdown reached the final moments. The cannon glowed white-hot. The shield flickered. Lyra screamed. Rian braced himself. Jalen squeezed his eyes shut, every second crushing his soul. And from the depths of fear and love and desperation, one broken, trembling command fell from his lips. Redirect power. Protect them first. The ship roared. The shield collapsed inward, only to surge outward again, doubling in strength, tripling, exploding into a force so massive it rippled through space like a tidal wave. The dreadnought fired, its devastating beam slamming into the shield, only to ricochet back, tearing through its own fleet. Fire blossomed across the stars, ships exploding, tearing apart in a chain reaction of impossible destruction. Lyra fell to her knees, staring through the hangar window with wide, shaking eyes as the Vorn fleet was torn apart by its own weapon, shock and disbelief paralyzing her. Rian whispered, voice trembling. He turned their attack against them? Inside, Jalen gasped, collapsing back into the command chair, tears pouring down his face as he realized what had happened. I didn't mean to kill them. I just wanted to stop them. His voice shook with grief, guilt, horror. The ship answered in a voice like an echo of 1,000 buried souls. War does not ask permission, but you chose mercy. You saved who you could. Jalen sobbed into his hands, shoulders shaking, because even victory felt like heartbreak. Even survival carried pain. But deep beneath that pain, one impossible truth pulsed. He had saved them. Not with hate, not with rage, with a heart that refused to abandon anyone. And the Colossus, ancient, powerful, unstoppable, had listened to him. The last human had just changed the fate of the galaxy, and the galaxy didn't even know he existed yet. The battlefield fell into a terrifying silence. Not peaceful, not calm, but the kind of silence that follows a scream too powerful to fade, a silence heavy with shock, ash, and the ghosts of what had just happened. The wreckage of the Vorn fleet drifted across the void like burning scars in the stars. Shattered hulls spinning slowly, flames flickering in the vacuum before dying into cold embers. Inside the collapsing station, Lyra pressed her shaking hand against the hangar window, staring at the floating remains with wide, tear-filled eyes, her breath trembling as she whispered. He did that. Jalen did that. Commander Rian stood behind her, unable to speak, unable to fully breathe, because he had witnessed power beyond comprehension. A single frightened boy channeling the force of a forgotten superweapon and turning destruction back upon an entire fleet. It was victory, yes, but it felt like standing in the shadow of a god. Lyra slid down to her knees, her voice breaking into painful sobs. He's all alone in there, and he's hurting. Because even though Jalen had saved them, she could feel the weight crushing him, could feel the pain of a heart that never wanted violence forced into a moment that changed the universe. Around them, the station groaned and shuddered, metal beams collapsing, sparks raining down like fireflies. They had to escape, but they couldn't leave him. They wouldn't. Rian clenched his fists, jaw trembling, voice raw with fear. We have to reach him. We have to get him off that ship before. He stopped, because they both sensed it. The Colossus wasn't done. Inside the bridge, Jalen sat hunched in the command chair, his body shaking uncontrollably, his tear-streaked face buried in his hands as he gasped for breath, drowning in guilt. I didn't want to kill anyone, he choked out, voice shattered. I didn't want anyone to die. I just wanted to stop the fighting. His shoulders trembled like they might collapse under the weight of the galaxy, and his heart felt torn between relief and horror, between saving lives and ending them. The ship did not deny what had happened. It did not pretend it was clean or easy. Instead, its voice came low, steady, almost sorrowful. The burden of command is not glory. It is grief. Jalen lifted his head, eyes red, breathing ragged, his voice trembling as he whispered, Why me? Why give this to me? I was nobody. He shook his head violently, hands gripping his hair. I don't want to be the last human. I don't want to carry this alone. The lights dimmed across the bridge, screens slowing, the ship's voice softening into something that felt ancient and aching. You were never nobody. You were always the answer. Jalen froze, confused and terrified. The ship continued. Humanity foresaw its fall. The Council's fear, the Dominion's escalation, the coming war. So they hid their future in bloodlines, scattered among colonies, waiting for one descendant who carried their genetic key. The screens shifted, showing maps of old human settlements, fractured bloodlines, sealed programs. You are the last known inheritor. The Colossus exists because you survived. Tears welled again, but this time they didn't fall from fear. They fell from heartbreak. His whole life, Jalen had searched for belonging, for identity, for someone to tell him who he was. Now he had the answer, and it was too big, too heavy, too lonely. He whispered, voice breaking, "I don't want to be the last. I don't want humanity to end with me." The ship responded with a single chilling revelation. Humanity did not end. Jalen's breath caught. His heart stopped. What do you mean?" The screens flickered, showing a starfield far beyond known space, coordinates locked behind encrypted protocols. Before the fall, humanity fled into uncharted systems. They sealed their location. They left the Colossus as a beacon, a key to unlock their return. Jalen stared, stunned, tears suspended on his lashes, his voice trembling. "So, humans? They're alive?" The ship paused, not uncertain, but reverent. If the Colossus awakens, and a true descendant commands it, the signal activates. And in that moment, deep within the ship's core, something clicked. A pulse, a flare of energy, a transmission rising like a voice across the cosmos. Jalen gasped as he felt it through the link, like his soul was reaching out into the dark. Lyra and Rian saw it too, the entire warship glowing with a new light, brighter, stronger, purposeful. "What's happening?" Lyra whispered, her heart racing. Inside, the ship spoke softly, almost like a vow. "Your heart chose mercy. Your heart chose protection. That is the humanity we were waiting for." The star map expanded across the screens, a golden path lighting up toward an impossible destination. Jalen's mouth parted, breath shaking, eyes filling with awe and terror. "A signal has been sent." "To who?" he whispered. The signal vanished into the stars like a silent scream of light, racing past nebulae, slicing through black space, disappearing into regions no map had ever named. And the moment it left the Colossus, the entire ship seemed to exhale, its tremors fading into a low, steady hum, as though 900 years of waiting had finally ended. On the bridge, Jalen sat motionless, his hands limp in his lap, his breathing fragile, his face wet with tears he no longer noticed. He stared at the glowing star map, stunned, hollow, trembling, because a truth too big for his heart had just crashed into him. He was not the last human. Somewhere out there, in the unreachable dark, his people were alive. His chest rose in a sharp, painful breath, a sob catching in his throat, not from fear this time, but from a hope so raw it shook him to the core. "I'm not alone," he whispered, the words breaking apart halfway, like he was afraid to believe them. The ship responded in a voice that resonated like a heartbeat. "You never were." Before Jalen could even absorb those words, alarms flickered across the bridge once more. Not danger alarms, not warnings, but something else. Something deeper. The screens shifted, displaying a new message. Response detected. Jalen's heart seized. The star map zoomed outward, tracing the path of the signal through uncharted darkness until it reached a distant point. A point now pulsing with returning energy. His voice cracked as he whispered, "They heard us?" Outside, Lyra and Rian staggered as the floor vibrated again. This time not from attack, but from power building beneath them, power that felt alive. The collapsing station lights flickered back to life, panels once dead sparking with renewed energy, as if the Colossus were feeding strength into the dying structure. "What's happening?" Lyra gasped, wiping tears from her cheeks. Rian stared at the hangar window, voice trembling. Something's answering the ship." Inside the bridge, the Colossus spoke with reverence. "Human fleet signature detected. Multiple vessels. Unknown class. Hyperspace breach imminent." Jalen's legs went numb. His breath vanished. He whispered, almost afraid of his own voice, "They're coming back?" The ship answered with a single word that echoed through his bones. "Yes." The star map dissolved into a live external view. Space beyond the station twisting, rippling as though reality itself were being pulled open. The stars distorted, bending around a point of impossible pressure. Energy crackled, blue and gold lightning flashing through the void. Rian and Lyra stared out the window with wide eyes as the fabric of space tore open, forming a massive hyperspace rift. Lyra covered her mouth, her voice shaking. No way, no way." Then shadows emerged, not small, not fragile, Not broken relics of a forgotten species. These were titans. Colossal silhouettes stepped out of the rift one by one, each ship dwarfing the Colossus in sheer scale, their hulls forged of shimmering metal that caught the starlight like polished obsidian. Their engines glowed with power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their formation was precise. Their presence was overwhelming. It was not a fleet of explorers. It was a fleet of giants. Human warships. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Silent. Regal. Terrifying. Alive. The scanners inside the bridge lit up, overwhelmed with data. Jalen could barely form words. They built these. His voice cracked into a choking sob because the myths were wrong. Humanity hadn't vanished in weakness. They had left in strength. They had gone somewhere the galaxy could never reach, and they had evolved into something unstoppable. The Colossus pulsed with light, its systems aligning. Fleet command link established. A new voice, calm, steady, unmistakably human, filled the bridge. This is Fleet Admiral Saran of the Terran Ascendant Armada. Identify the one who awakened the Colossus. Jalen's throat tightened. His heart hammered. He felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. His voice came out as a whisper, trembling. My name is Jalen. He could barely breathe. I'm human. A long silence. Then soft, powerful, full of emotion that no machine could fake. Welcome home, Commander. Jalen's breath shattered. Tears fell freely. He covered his mouth with shaking hands as a sob of relief tore through him. For the first time in his life, he belonged somewhere. He wasn't a mistake. He wasn't a ghost. He was family. He was history. He was the bridge between what humanity was and what it had become. Outside, Lyra dropped to her knees, overwhelmed, staring at the impossible fleet filling the sky. He brought them back, she whispered, voice trembling. Rian placed a hand on her shoulder, stunned, whispering, No, they were never gone. Inside, the Colossus dimmed its lights in a gesture that felt like a bow. Awaiting your command, Commander Jalen. Jalen wiped his tears, breath shaking, heart pounding. Not with fear, but with purpose. He stood from the command chair on unsteady legs, staring out at the returning fleet, at the ships of his ancestors, at the future of his species, and with a voice still cracked by emotion but strengthened by destiny, he whispered the first command of humanity's return.